Initiative for Health Accountability and Transparency welcome you to CPD Academy course on Monitoring and Evaluation. This is course 1 and is on essentials of monitoring and evaluation. CPD Academy is the learning hub for health professionals. My name is MJ Abdullah, your instructor for this course. Let us examine the course design and materials. The CPD program on monitoring and evaluation is made up of 3 courses. Monitoring and Evaluation Course 1 on Essentials of Monitoring and Evaluation. This deals with the basics and fundamentals of monitoring and evaluation. We have Monitoring and Evaluation Course 2, which deals with data sources, collection and analysis. And also we have Monitoring and Evaluation Course 3, which is on assessing monitoring and evaluation system and developing monitoring and evaluation framework and plan. The course materials include a graded pre-test quiz, which is mandatory for all participants to take at the beginning of the course, the video, the downloadable PowerPoint presentation, which provides more information and details, the graded course completion examination, and also suggested resources on monitoring and evaluation. Those who choose to have course completion certificate and/or continuing medical education credit will need to achieve 75% pass and pay a little fees. Let us look at the outline of the presentation. It starts with introduction, which provides a prelude or preamble to the course. We also have basic concepts and ideas in monitoring and evaluation. We also have monitoring and evaluation, the different types and also the differences between them. There will be discussion on importance and benefits of monitoring and evaluation. Also the components of monitoring and evaluation. We'll also discuss the scope of monitoring and evaluation and the characteristics of a good MRE system. There is also a discussion on fundamental steps to carry out MRE, the stages in conducting monitoring and evaluation, and we'll draw a brief conclusion. On the learning objectives, participants will be able to define and understand the basic concepts, terms, and ideas in MRE. They'll also be able to explain the different types of monitoring and evaluation and the differences between them. They will understand the importance and the benefits of doing an MRE, explain the different components of the MRE system, describe characteristics of a good MRE system, and also understand the fundamental steps to carry out monitoring and evaluation, and also the stages in conducting monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation refer to 2 different processes that are closely tied and often used together most of the time. Both are an integral but distinct parts of project cycle. It is important to make a distinction between them to clearly understand the terms. MRE are critical tools for sound and effective management of programs and interventions in the health system and in all sectors, and have become essential components of every intervention project or program. In view of resource constraints and the increased emphasis on doing more with fewer resources, monitoring and evaluation has become an important factor in determining which interventions are most efficient and effective. You cannot discuss monitoring and evaluation without understanding the project cycle. The project cycle starts with planning, and in the course of implementation, it has the monitoring and evaluation component and also the learning phase, applying the findings, and based on the findings, you can replan or you can reprogram. We also need to understand the basic terminology, concepts, and ideas in monitoring and evaluation. The first is to look at the theory of change. The theory of change describes how a program, project, or intervention will deliver the planned results. It highlights a result or logical framework which outlines how the sequence of inputs, activities, and outputs of a program will attain specific outcomes. Let us look at the meaning of program. Program is an organized effort to respond to a social problem. This typically happens at the national level, while the project is a specific set of activities with linked objectives that contribute to overall objective of a program. And unlike the program, this normally happens at the subnational level, that is at the states, local government, districts, and world level. There is intervention. Interventions are sometimes described as project, and they are a specific subset of program or project activities. It is usual to hear about goals and objectives. A goal is the purpose for which we aim to achieve. Goals look at overall accomplishments or achievements for which we must make an effort. Goals are generally long term. Objectives is something that our efforts or actions are intended to achieve or accomplish. Unlike goals, objectives are measurable and tangible. Objectives are either mid-term or short-term, and they are often described as being SMART in a project or a program. Let us look further to the differences between goals and objectives. A goal is broad, while objective is specific. A goal is intangible, while objective is tangible. Goals are abstract, while objectives are measurable. Let us look at some common objectives in health projects. Sometimes we talk about access to healthcare. We talk about objectives related to improvement in health outcomes. We talk about consumer focus or patient-centeredness. Sometimes we discuss quality service delivery or increased utilization or uptake of services. We also think and talk about innovative health financing. We talk about objectives related to development of human resources for health and also optimal use of resources. Other concepts that we often hear of in a program, project, or intervention includes inputs. These are human, financial, and other resources used in undertaking program activities. They include human resources, particularly trained personnel, standard operating procedures and guidelines, training materials, also supplies and consumables, and of course, financial resources. There is also activities or processes. These are things that need to be done to achieve or accomplish program objectives. They include curriculum development for training, conducting training workshops itself, recording and reporting a program or project, dissemination of IEC materials, and also supervision of staff. The output aspects. Outputs are major results that are needed to achieve the objectives, that is, what the program delivers. If we look at MNCH program, outputs will include pregnant women receiving regular antenatal care, intermittent preventive treatment for malaria, and also the iron folate that is distributed, or children fully immunized as when due, or women that are immunized during antenatal care. Outcomes. These are intended results or benefits of a program or change that occur on a short or on long term. They are also commonly referred to as project purpose or objectives after activities are completed. Examples include changes in knowledge, behavior, attitudes, and skills of staff, and also the clients. There's also increased antenatal uptake, increased skill bed attendance, and also improvement in quality of care. These are all outcomes. Let us look at what we mean by impact. Impact is the wider effect of program on long term. An example is the decline in maternal, newborn, and child mortality and morbidity, the decline in morbidity and mortality due to HIV as a result of multiple interventions that are happening, and also decline in incidence of malnutrition also as a result of interventions. These are all good examples of impacts of interventions or programs. Let us see how we link all these terms that we have just described in a results chain or framework, which begins from input to process to output to outcome and impact. And the examples are listed here: financial resources, staffs, and supplies in the domain of input, policy development, capacity building, community mobilization in the domain of process. We look at output: increased skills of providers, increased awareness on antenatal care and skill bed attendance. There are also mobilized communities and also sound policies. These are all examples of outputs. For outcomes include increased antenatal uptake or increased skill bed attendance, while the impact has to do with the reductions that I have made examples earlier. Let's do a brainstorming session on monitoring and evaluation. Take few seconds and note down keywords or points in your understanding of monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation refers to collecting, storing, analyzing, and finally transforming data into strategic information so that it can be used to make informed decisions for program management and improvement, policy formulation, and advocacy. When we discuss monitoring and evaluation, there are questions that goes with it. For example, in monitoring, the question is, what are we doing? And we know what we're doing. We are tracking inputs, we are tracking outputs to assess whether programs are performing according to plans. And also, there is question regarding evaluation, which is often what have we achieved? And this we answer by assessment of impact of program on behavior or health outcomes. Did you correctly note down some of the key points in the definition of monitoring and evaluation? You may wish to reverse back to the past few slides for more understanding of the meaning of monitoring and evaluation. There are differences between monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring is often routine, while evaluation is a periodic activity that makes inferences or generalization about the relevance and effectiveness of a program or project. Monitoring is observational in nature, like we said, what are we doing? And evaluation is judgmental. Monitoring happens at operational level, while evaluation is done at organization or business level and is often performed by managers. Monitoring is a short-term process that is concerned with collection of information regarding the success of the project, while evaluation is a long-term process which not only records the information but also assesses the outcomes and the impact of the project. Monitoring focuses on improving the overall efficiency of the project by removing bottlenecks while the project is under process, while evaluation stresses on improving the effectiveness of the project by making the comparison with established standards. It is also important to note that monitoring is usually carried out by the people who are directly involved in its implementation, while evaluation can be conducted by internal staff of organization, that is the managers, or it can also be carried out by independent external party who can give their impartial views on the project or program. Let us look at different types of monitoring and evaluation. There are different types of monitoring and evaluation. Let us first of all look at the types of monitoring. We have process monitoring. This is often referred to as activity monitoring. Process monitoring is implemented during the initial phase of a project, as its sole purpose is to track the use of inputs and resources, along with examining how activities and outputs are delivered. It is often conducted in conjunction with compliance monitoring and feeds into the evaluation of impact. We also have compliance monitoring. The purpose of compliance monitoring is to ensure compliance with donor regulations, grants rules and regulations, contract requirements, local government regulation and laws. We also have ethical standards, most importantly, compliance with the expected results of the project. The need for compliance monitoring could arise at any stage of project life cycle. Let us look at another type of monitoring, which is the context monitoring. Context monitoring is often called situation monitoring. It tracks the overall setting in which the project operates. Context monitoring helps us to identify and measure risks. It also helps us to identify and measure assumptions or any unexpected situations that may arise within the institutional, political, financial, and policy context at any point during the project. There is the beneficiary monitoring. This type of monitoring is sometimes referred to as beneficiary contact monitoring (BCM), and the need for this may arise at any stage of project cycle. Its primary purpose is to track the overall perceptions of direct and indirect beneficiaries in relation to a project. It includes beneficiary satisfaction or complaints with the project and its components, including their participation, treatment, access to resources, whether these are equitable, and their overall experience of change. Beneficial monitoring also tracks stakeholder complaints and feedback mechanism. Let's not also forget the important aspect of financial monitoring. The main purpose of financial monitoring is to measure financial efficiency within a project. It tracks the real expenditure involved in a project in comparison to the allocated budget and helps the project team to form strategies to maximize outputs with minimal inputs. This is often conducted in combination with process and compliance monitoring and is crucial for accountability and reporting purposes. We also have organizational monitoring. As the name suggests, organizational monitoring tracks institutional development. It tracks communication, collaboration, sustainability, and capacity building within an organization and with its partners and stakeholders in relation to project implementation. And finally, we also have results monitoring. This is where monitoring interweaves with evaluation. It gathers data to demonstrate a project's overall effects and impacts on the target population. Results monitoring helps the project team to determine if the project is on the right track towards its intended results and whether there may be any unintended impacts. These are all examples of monitoring. Let us have a look at the different types of evaluation. There is formative evaluation, which is generally conducted before the project implementation phase, but may also continue through the implementation stage. Its main purpose is to generate baseline data to investigate the need for the project. to raise awareness of the initial project status, identify areas of concern, and provide recommendations for project implementation and guidance and compliance. We also have process evaluation. It is conducted as soon as the project implementation stage begins. It assesses whether the project activities have been executed as intended and also resulted in certain outputs. Process evaluation is useful in identifying the shortcomings of a project while the project is still ongoing to make the necessary improvements. This also helps to assess the long-term sustainability of the project. Let's not also forget there is real-time evaluation. Real-time evaluation is undertaken during the project implementation phase. It is often conducted during emergency scenarios where immediate feedback for modification is required to improve ongoing implementation. The emphasis is on immediate lesson learning over impact evaluation or accountability. There is the participatory evaluation. This type of evaluation is conducted collaboratively with the beneficiaries, stakeholders, and partners to improve the project implementation. Participatory evaluation can be empowering for everyone involved as it builds capacity, it builds consensus and ownership. It also enhances credibility and also enhances joint support. Let us look at outcome evaluation. This type of evaluation is conducted once the project activities have been implemented. It measures the immediate effects or outcomes of the activities in the target population and helps to make improvement to increase the effectiveness of the project. There is the summative evaluation. This occurs immediately after project conclusion to assess project efficacy and the instant changes manifested by its intervention. Summative evaluation compares the actual outcome of data with baseline data to determine whether the project was successful in producing the intended outcomes or bring about the intended benefits to the target population. It provides evidence of project success or failure to the stakeholders and donors to help them determine whether it makes sense to invest more time and money for project intervention. Let's not also forget there is impact evaluation, which is very common. Impact evaluation assesses the long-term impact of behavioral change as a result of projects and its interventions on the target community or population. It assesses the degree to which the project meets the goal rather than focusing on its management and delivery. This typically occurs after project completion or during the final stage of project cycle. There is cluster or sector evaluation. This evaluation is implemented by different organizations, programs, or projects that are working on similar thematic areas. It assesses a set of interconnected activities across different projects and entities. As a result, it strengthens partnership within these key sectors while improving their coordination, accountability, predictability, and response capacity. Thematic evaluation focuses on one theme across a number of projects, programs, or whole organization. The theme could be anything, ranging from gender, migration, environment, etc. And lastly, but not the least, is meta-evaluation. This is used to assess the evaluation process itself. Meta-evaluations could be useful to make a selection of future evaluation types, check compliance with evaluation policy and good practices, assesses how well evaluations are utilized for organizational learning and change. Let us look at the importance of monitoring and evaluation. What is the importance of monitoring and evaluation will always be a question that we need to be familiar with the responses. Monitoring and evaluation often serve as a source of information on project progress. It also provides opportunity for sharing experiences, knowledge, and lessons learned, and also reports emanating from MIE contribute to transparency and accountability, and also forms the basis for questioning and testing assumptions and hypotheses. It is important to note that monitoring and evaluation also influence policy and decision making. These are very key issues that we need to understand as importance of monitoring and evaluation. Apart from importance, there are what we call the benefits of monitoring and evaluation. They may be overlapping, but we need to understand that the first thing is problem solving. Monitoring and evaluation help project managers to identify and solve problems quickly in a timely manner. It is also beneficial in providing learning and knowledge. Monitoring and evaluation contribute to wider knowledge acquisition at all levels of program management and at local levels where data are collected and analyzed. There is also the benefit of accountability. Monitoring and evaluation helps to assess whether accountabilities are met for implementation of a plan and expected program results. This forms an important part of accountability to funding agencies and stakeholders. Other benefits include performance monitoring. Performance monitoring provides information on how well an intervention is performing and whether it is achieving its set aims and objectives. There is the aspect of information. MIE provides information on how well an intervention is performing and whether it is achieving its aims and objectives. There is improvement aspect. Evaluation and monitoring contribute to improvements in implementation methods and significant changes in program design, particularly as program is being implemented, lessons are being learned which will be applied in program design. There is the aspect of guidance. MIE provides guidance on future intervention activities. Like we said earlier, it contributes to learning through both the process and the final product or evaluation report. There is also the issue of buy-in as one of the benefits. Increasingly, evaluation processes are used to foster wider participation. They allow dialogue, build consensus, and build buy-in or create buy-in generally. Other benefits include advocacy. Evaluations of successful pilot projects provide the necessary vigor and evidence to advocate for scaling up. And lastly, but not the least, is the warning system. Monitoring provides early warning system that draws attention to emerging issues or challenges in project implementation. There are often key monitoring and evaluation questions, and these include: did the program achieve its objectives? Did the target population benefit from the program? And at what cost is the project implemented? Can improved health outcomes be attributed to program efforts? Or which program activities were more or less important or effective? And what would have happened in the absence of the program? Further questions include whether a program is on schedule in terms of timeliness of planned activities, or whether a policy plan or program has produced desired impacts. And there's also the question of, did the program generate knowledge, identify factors that influence health outcomes. There is also the question of when the program informed new policy, planning or program decisions, new services, resource allocation, or correction. These are key questions that monitoring and evaluation, like we have discussed earlier, will help to answer. Let us take a second brainstorming session on the components of monitoring and evaluation system. Can you please take few moments and note down the components of monitoring and evaluation system? Just list the components of monitoring and evaluation system. To understand MIE system, we need to know what system means. A system is a collection of components, parts or elements that work together to achieve a common objective. In an MIE system, all the components must be present, they must interact and interrelate to function effectively as a whole. There are 12 components of MIE system, and they are often classified or grouped into 3 categories, or to call the rings. The 12 categories can be categorized into 3 groups: the outer green ring comprising of 6 components, the middle blue ring comprising of 5 components, and the inner red ring comprising of just 1 component. Let us look at the outer ring. This ring represents the enabling environment required for MIE to function effectively. There are 6 components, and all these components are related to people, to partnerships, and planning that support data production and data use. And they include organizational structures, human capacity, partnerships, MIE plan, costed plan, MIE advocacy communication, and culture. There is the middle ring. This is made up of 5 components related to data management processes, data collection, capture, verification of all types of program MIE data according to all levels of program MIE staircase. There is the inner ring, which involves data analysis to create information for dissemination to inform and empower decision making at all levels and MIE plan. Recall that we have just mentioned 12 components of MIE system. Did you correctly note down some of the components of the monitoring and evaluation? If you did not, you may wish to reverse back to the last few slides for more understanding of the components of MIE system. There are characteristics of the 12 components. We need to understand that the components are interdependent and they are also result-based. Interdependence means they are interconnecting and interlinking. Each of them cannot stand on their own, so they have to interact and interface. And each of these have performance goals. Of what use are the components of MIE system? The components form the basis for conducting MIE system assessment and developing MIE plans. The use of components for MIE assessment will be discussed in detail in the Monitoring Evaluation Course 3, which is on assessing MIE system and developing MIE framework and plan. It is important to understand fundamental steps required to carry out MIE. There are 5 of these steps. It begins with stakeholders and also ends with stakeholders. Of course, emphasizing the importance of stakeholder in MIE. First is agree on scope, objectives, and indicators with stakeholders. This must be in tandem with the project document. There is also the step of collecting information or selected indicators, analyzing the information gathered, and comparing results with program initial goals and objectives and targets. And most importantly, also is the sharing results with stakeholders. It is important to build partnership. So stakeholders are very, very key and important. Defining the scope of MIE. How do we define the scope of MIE? What does the word scope refers to? Scope refers to the extent of the activity to be undertaken in MIE. Scope is determined by several questions. The first question is, what should be monitored and evaluated? MIE can measure each stage of a program development, design, system development and functioning, and also implementation. After goals, objectives, and activities are developed, decision on about MIE at each stage is needed. MIE effort can measure each stage to determine how the program is working and its impact on target population. There is also the issue of program design, which is measured by process evaluation. It is about assessing how well the program has been designed and documenting the successes and challenges with the program design. There is also the question of system development and functioning, which is measured by monitoring and evaluation. It documents the development of support system and timing if they are actually operating once program implementation begins. It also assesses the performance of support systems and also measure how effective the preparatory activities are in readying program personnel for program implementation. Part of what includes implementation is measured by monitoring, process evaluation, and outcome impact evaluation, which reveals how program implementation is occurring and determine whether program is achieving its objectives by measuring the changes in outcomes in the target population. The other question is, when should health program be monitored and evaluated? Monitoring and the evaluation process should occur throughout the life of a program. Outcome and impact evaluation are usually done near the end of a program. Baseline gathered to measure change. Starting MIE at the beginning of a program is ideal. Some activities can still be measured if MIE is started in the middle of a program. Even fewer activities can be measured if MIE is started towards the end of the program. How much will it cost? Financial resources will influence the level of evaluation that takes place. It is important to note that usually the cost of MIE is overlooked. It is therefore important right from the beginning to provide adequately and sufficiently for MIE. Program managers must determine whether the time, effort, and cost of an evaluation are justifiable in light of the expected benefits. If you have few resources, your first priority should be to establish a monitoring system. If additional resources are available, undertake some form of process evaluation. Outcome evaluation require a moderate to high level of resources. Impact evaluation require an even higher level of financial and technical resources. Therefore, budgeting for an MIE effort is an important part of planning. It is also important to note and also understand why we need to invest in MIE. When we invest in MIE, it strengthens program design, improve implementation, justify allocation of limited resources, improve use of allocated resources. It also generates knowledge and also meet an organizational requirement. Last but not the least is who should be involved in evaluation. All stakeholders. Stakeholder involvement can make MIE effort more relevant and effective and also participatory. Involving stakeholders can help achieve the following goals. That is, when we do what we call participatory monitoring and evaluation, it helps us to build consensus about the key issues to be addressed in an evaluation, identify what information stakeholders need about the program, ensure that program staff understand the need for evaluation, their roles in its implementation, and how the results will be used to improve the program, avoid inappropriate evaluation methods, create open line of communication among stakeholders for later dissemination and discussion of evaluation or monitoring and evaluation results. A good MIE system has specific attributes or characteristics. A good MIE system serves several functions. It ensures that most efficient use of resources to generate the data needed for decision making. It also serves many constituencies by bringing all of the various interests together into one system to avoid duplication of efforts, such as the program managers, donors, and government partners. And it's also important to note that it serves as a catalyst to better coordination. Let us take the third and final brainstorming session. What are the different stages in conducting monitoring and evaluation? Take few seconds and note down the stages in conducting monitoring and evaluation. There are 5 stages in conducting monitoring and evaluation. It starts with developing indicator, designing the process, selecting the methods for monitoring and evaluation, doing analysis, and providing feedback. Let us start with indicator development. Both monitoring and evaluation require a means of assessing the changes or results produced as a result of an intervention. The development of good indicators requires clarity about the purposes of the intervention. Indicators should therefore be directly related to the goal, aims, objectives, and activities set out in the intervention planning documents. Depending on the intervention, indicators may include variables such as attendance rates, the proportion of people with knowledge of a certain subject, and the next one has to do with designing monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation should include all those activities associated with or affected by the intervention in question. With respect to monitoring, monitoring can involve specially designed activities such as regular meetings with beneficiaries of intervention and project staff in order to assess their opinions on project activities or to discuss the analysis of field notes. Monitoring activities can be incorporated into routine project recording systems that are collated and analyzed at regular intervals, such as immunization or family planning records, records of condom distribution or ARV use, and patient numbers. On the evaluation component, decisions have to be taken at the beginning of intervention about the rigor with which a project is to be evaluated. For most interventions, it is usually enough to demonstrate that changes are occurring in key areas of interest. However, if an intervention is taking place at a pilot or demonstration site, it may be necessary to establish statistical associations between intervention inputs and outputs, or to compare one intervention site with another or with a control group. Looking at the third stage, which has to do with selection of methods, both monitoring and evaluation can use a variety of quantitative, qualitative, and participatory methods. Quantitative measurement enables easy comparison of changes over time. Qualitative methods are useful for obtaining insights into community perceptions and processes of change. Simple participatory tools can be developed to facilitate community involvement, like the use of maps, the charts, pictures, or even color codes. The fourth stage has to do with analysis. It is important to define how much information is needed and how analysis will be done. The accumulation of too many data or the collection of data that are too complicated for analysis at the local level are common mistakes that we make. And the final has to do with providing feedback. It is important to feedback the information obtained from monitoring and evaluation to different stakeholder groups. Feedback information can be considered for changing, developing, or expanding the project in question. The results of evaluation can be powerful advocacy tool with which to lobby for further funding, for replication, for expansion, or social or policy changes. Did you correctly note down the stages in conducting monitoring and evaluation exercise? We have highlighted the 5 stages involved in conducting monitoring and evaluation, and have discussed each of them extensively. You may wish to reverse back to the last few slides to reflect further on the discussion. Monitoring and evaluation are integral but distinct parts of program project preparation and implementation. They are critical tools for sound and effective management of programs and interventions in the health system. Therefore, they have become essential components of every intervention, project, or program. Considering the increased emphasis on doing more with fewer resources, monitoring and evaluation is important in determining which interventions are most effective and efficient. A number of resources for further reading have been highlighted here on monitoring and evaluation. You may wish to access some of them and also cross-reference them for other valuable resource materials.